Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Humberto, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Let's hit the road running. What got
Let's do
you
it.
into transformation and advisory work, Humberto?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What got you into consulting? What got you into transformation work?
Well, I guess part of the root of it is the fact that I'm an architect, a building architect. I did go to school for 5 years, got a professional degree in architecture, then city planning at MIT. And I don't know, there's something about being an architect that you want to see things done. You want to go from paper to actually make it a reality, right? And so that desire to make things happen, to take dreams and materialize them into something that is tangible and real, that has a beautiful result, a big impact, is what drives me.
It's very poetic. I like it. So how do you make that transition from architect to consulting, right? Because you could do all that whilst staying an architect, right? What got you into consulting specifically?
Well, it's one of those points in your early career where you come at crossroads. I was looking for work as an architect, newly married, before I had my daughter, and I found a lot of the jobs were not very interesting. And then I got into temping in a medical center here in Boston, and began learning technology, began showing good skills at planning, programming complex implementations, and my life changed. I was taken over. I was offered a position in which I was working between the CEO and the COO to make things happen. So I implemented major systems. I think my background as an architect has helped a great deal in that sense.
I love that. So what do you do for your clients? Like what problem do you solve specifically? And how do you leverage your architect skills and training into your consulting work?
Well, I think one of the advantages we use metaphors of architecture everywhere, right? Because it's how things are put together. And I think it's finding the right balance between what you're trying to achieve and the budget and the cognitive aspects of the productivity. It's balancing multiple variables at once, right? Sometimes initiatives tend to focus on one aspect or another, and typically the most comprehensive perspective that you bring forward, the better answers you will get, right? So if we focus on technology for the sake of technology, we're likely not to get the results that we expect. But if we think around technology as an enabler for something else, I think that changes everything. So I think that helps a lot. And the other thing is going from macro to micro, and from micro to macro. Being able to switch zooms and perspectives is very critical, right? So you don't get blindsided by detail or ignore the big picture.
So how do you apply all this for your clients? Like what specific problem do you solve as a consultant now?
Well, I try to help businesses transform and evolve. And I think part of what I do different is listening very closely. Since I became an independent, this has become a superpower, being able to listen and to address needs for expansion, due diligence, force merger integration, expanding to new markets, defining a strategic plan. So I work around all these things. But what I've learned over the years is that technology, having financial resources, having the right talent is critical. But it all comes down to people, right? Is how the dynamics of the company results in people being unable to deliver their best, I think is a critical part of what I do, is focusing on leadership and organizational enablement as a route to achieve any objective. And we're seeing the same situation that we've seen with other technology waves with AI.
So, how do you help people, well, companies with people? I understand you do workforce transformation, right? I'm trying to understand because I
Mhm.
want who are your clients? How do you get to them? How do you, take them from strangers to knowing you to potential clients? But I'd like to pinpoint like what pain point do you solve for them?
Well, one thing that I try to do is understand the dynamics of the leadership. It all starts in leadership. So what I do many
Oh, okay.
times is work directly with the senior leadership team and the board in understanding, either why transformation initiatives are not yielding results, or how can the organization be ready to embark a complex transformation of any kind, either technology driven or new market driven or new product driven. Is finding that um, the ability to understand what could move the agenda and move the needle for the company in getting those things done.
Yeah. Love it. So you work with the leadership teams to see where they are trying to operate some transformation and some changes, where they're stuck in this transformation, and help them get unstuck. Basically, is that
Well,
a
that, and
proper?
I also, go deeper into understanding the culture, the visible and not
Right.
invisible, the informal organization. Like to talk to a variety of stakeholders. In the case that I'm trying to assess a situation, many years ago, I spent about 3 years reviewing trouble transformation, big ones, over 150 million. And at the point that the client and the company that was driving the transformation were going to sue each other, so I would be invited to review everything, the contract, the technology architecture. I would bring experts, of course, to back me up. I would look at leadership decision making. And I'll tell you, after you look at everything, I would say 99% of the time, trouble in business transformation had to do with leadership, decision rights, um, uh, and how people collaborate and co-create around what they're trying to do. So it always boils down to people and culture. The thing is that we've come accustomed to think that culture cannot be changed, but it can be changed.
Yeah. And the more I'm getting into business, so here we're talking about consulting, but also any business, the more I see how important culture is, especially when you want to scale, right? Because you can build a small business, of course, with like minimum culture, and just like the point is to get clients, to get those clients to pay us and to deliver to those clients well enough that they don't want to leave us. But once you start working on the culture, really embedding into your employees and the way you do work, what matters to you, this will not only get felt by your employees who will work harder, stick longer, and help you build that company. Your clients will also feel it. So the thing that you just mentioned here, what you're helping people on the cultural aspect, in my opinion, this is such an important part of business, especially as you start growing and trying to scale. So who the decision maker that you're trying to reach, Humberto? Like now that we understand what you're doing and how you're helping companies, what are those companies? Who is it that you're trying to help? And who are the decision makers? Because that's something that consultants struggle with a lot, right? Getting into the right room with the right decision makers, the ones that are going to unlock the budget, but also say, yes, you have my buy-in, let's go. So to understand a bit better your business, who is it that you try to get in front of to say, I can help with culture and I can help with transformation?
Well, in my experience as a partner at PwC and KPMG, I work with Fortune 50, 100, Fortune 500. But right now, as an independent, my big focus is mid-market.
Okay.
So companies that either starting with great promise, or companies that are mid-sized, because I think that's a largely unattended market by some of the bigger firms. And also, I believe that they have the most possibility of change, of innovation, right? Sometimes moving a large corporation, a Fortune 50 company, from one end of the business to another is immensely difficult. Mid-sized companies today, with every technology that we have derived from Gen AI, for example, gives them enormous capabilities to compete with the bigger ones. So I try to target directly conversations with the CEO or with the C-suite in general, or with the board, depending on what the issue is, because it all starts with leadership, right? You could have really great and engaging conversations with middle management, and you can have dinner and be excited about the possibilities. But sometimes you can exist in those conversations in a bubble, right? You're not aware of what's going on with the dynamics in the leadership, which ultimately makes the decisions. And whatever leadership does, it tends to trickle down, for better or for worse, into the rest of the organization.
Amen to that. Okay. How do you get those people to know you? Like, how do you, because I feel this is such an important topic in consulting, especially in 2025. We need to be considered as the authority. We need to be considered as the subject matter expert, right? This is how we get pulled in by clients, also potentially by other consultants who know you and who want to work with you because they have an engagement where you might be relevant. So, like, building that brand and building that authority is more important than ever. I think, and you can relate to it when during your partner's day at PwC and KPMG, you had that brand from the company already. How do you go from that to building your brand and getting traction from your potential clients with your existing practice?
Well, I leverage a lot of my personal network. I spent, before I became an independent, I mapped out everybody that I knew, basically that could have influence in anything that could be adjacent to what I like to do. And sometimes just getting advice and good words from people ends up opening a channel. One of the projects that I have right now doing strategic planning, I got through a contact that introduced me to a contact who introduced me to another contact. So I think personal referrals and personal network is important. I'm increasingly with things that I'm trying to do in social media. I think it has been a good source of referrals for me as well. But I think my personal network has helped a great deal in referrals from people that I know. I'm always talking to people about what's going on and in business and in the world. So it always opens channels, and your name goes around.
So I think this is the consulting 101, right? You get business through referrals, through your personal network. And I like that because it means you have a great service, right? If people go as far as recommending you and introducing you to people that you could work with, is that they are willing to put their reputation at stake to be like, hey, you should look into what Humberto or this consultant is doing because they might be able to help. Now, that's usually very good to get started and to maintain a steady flow of business. But because you work with people and they, in their turn, talk about you positively. Once you're trying to scale, though, it's where it's interesting to have potentially another, not yet acquisition channel necessarily, but a way to get out there. One of the guests that I've interviewed today, she's going to conferences, for instance. She's writing a lot on LinkedIn. Um, are there other things apart from your personal network and referrals that you're doing to proactively start building that brand?
Well, belonging to professional organizations is another part of the Private Directors Association, for example. And they have very wonderful dinners with small groups, so you can have really good conversations, very accomplished people who also have large networks. So that's another source of and I'm doing that in many, going to events as well, trying to. I always, when I go to an event, if I meet a couple of really interesting people, I'm satisfied that it was well worth the investment of time to be there. And fortunately, in Boston, is a city very rich in talent, and just about anywhere you go, you're likely to meet somebody who is trying to do something amazing. And I've proven that that is true. It's a wonderful place to be to do what I'm doing.
So Humberto is very aware of the fact that I'm visiting different cities in the US right now, ladies and gentlemen. So that's his way of trying to get me to come to Chicago, I guess. But yeah, no, that makes
Boston.
Boston. Sorry, here we go.
Chicago is cool too.
Can do great business in Chicago and Boston. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So leveraging these personal networks, and I like it because you're doubling down on your strength, from what I understand, right, Humberto? You're good at networking. Obviously, you have the credentials from PwC and KPMG, and instead of doing something completely new, right, that could work but would take time to actually work, you're like, okay, how else could I leverage those skills? Well, by joining private associations and institutions that will get me into the rooms through dinners, through events with other people who I'm going to be able to double down on the skills. Is that correct? Is that the advice that we can give B2B coaches and consultants on what to do if they are good at networking in the first place?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I also do chambers of commerce, going to
Right.
there, the Boston Business Journal, which is national. Also, yeah, I think is these days you have to multi-channel just about everything,
So
right?
I
There,
agree.
I mean,
I think
the
go
reach
ahead.
that I could get with social media, for
Mhm.
example, could go well beyond Massachusetts,
Yeah.
right? And I loved, I've done a lot of global work throughout my career in Europe, in South America, in Asia. So I've always welcomed opportunities to be known outside of the US as well.
Mm. So I think that does make a lot of sense. And you build up as you go. The all the digital space is going to give you leverage, right? To your point around multi-channel, I think you want to meet where your potential client is at, and depending on where they are at in the purchasing journey as well, right?
Mm.
Making them aware that you're here, problem aware, solution aware, Humberto aware, and then taking action towards engaging with you, not yet hiring you, but like getting there. Each of those steps require a specific type of content and interaction on different platforms. Like when you land into an email box, it's like to try and trigger a response, whereas posting on LinkedIn, for instance, is more about brand awareness.
Mhm.
So when you say multi-channel, I think you're extremely right in the sense that this is what we need to do today to showcase authority at the different purchasing stages of the journey. Um, so it's great. I think you have a good strategy. How do you get people from, okay, I've met you at the event from the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or I've met you at dinner, we discussed, and it seems that I can potentially help, or, you're a common acquaintance from John from KPMG. I don't know if you know John, I'm just throwing a random name out there. How do you get people from problem aware and solution aware to, you know, an SOW and an engagement letter? How does the sales motion look like?
Well, I guess part of my style has never been a salesperson. So the way that I sell is through reasoning, uh, having conversation around value, right? I think that when you're very focused on technology and the benefit of technology, but you're not looking at the ultimate business impact, um, and keep your client aware about the value that it would generate, as well as having grounded expectations, right? Because I think part of the issue is that you have to build trust. And to be trust, you have to be trustworthy, which means that I never push any solution or any product to my clients if it's not going to address the challenge that they have, right? So I try to be honest about what I know and I don't know. I have a good network of partners that are, experts in what they do. And I think by being trustworthy, being listening with intent, listening to really understand what the challenge is, what are the specific variables in terms of talent, budget constraints, and organizational issues or leadership issues that they may have. I think that helps move things along, right? And and it's a little bit of my trying to insight uh, perspective into my client as opposed to my saying, okay, you got to do this because it's best practice. Because if the client doesn't internalize why are you doing this and what are the impacts that it would have, you also have to understand their personal agenda in terms of what role do they play in the future and what are the people that I would be most impacted by it. So I think it's a journey of patience in building relationships, but especially it's the point where you begin to build trust by being transparent and being a good listener.
So being honest and transparent as to what you can help with, when is the right time to help, and really seeing only the need of the client. And if it's not the right time, then it's not the right time. Is that the way you approach this sales motion?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I tell you, there are people that want to do a major ERP implementation, but and they think that the technology is going to solve all their problems. But when you look at the organization, they are very disjointed, not coherent. People are not on board. They have a lot of division between the business units. There is some pre-work,
Yeah.
right? And I think that when organizations are aware of that, it's okay, right? Because you know you're going to run into these issues. The difficulty and where I pull back is when I run into clients that believe that technology, for example, will solve all their problems, including culture, and typically that doesn't happen. I've seen it over and over. Again, technology in itself is not going to change people, nor is going to magically turbocharge the business, right? If you don't get all the right people to do all the right things, 'cause people make strategy happen.
So again, I like it a lot, Humberto. I really like the approach. And I think, I mean, this is coming from PwC as well. I think there is that in common. You have your reputation is so important that it is more important than the immediate engagement, right? So you'd rather build that long-term reputation that will, on the long run, pay off much more than just trying to push a project and an engagement as fast as possible. The thing that I'm thinking though is for consultants who are, maybe targeting mid-market, I still think you need to take care of your reputation, right, and be very mindful of it. Do you typically, for the example that you just took, right, that you just gave about the ERP implementation, but there is a lot of pre-work required. Are you going to try then to position yourself on the pre-work to be like, hey, look, I don't think you're ready for the massive multi-country, multilateral, multi-function ERP transformation. However, we can do that pre-work together so that you're ready in 6 months to actually go through this, and then happy to help as well. Do you then try to down/upsell for an engagement? Or are you just like, hey, now is not the right time for you. Come back to me when you meet those conditions. How do you do that?
If they're open to prep, because what I usually tell them is that you may think you're saving time and money by going fast into something that will likely not have success, than to take a little bit of time just to prep better, to ensure you have all your, to the extent possible, your I's dotted, your T crossed, right? So that you have a better chance of success. All technology implementations are complicated. They're always surprises. They're always difficult moments, right? But I think by preparing and making sure that you're ready, you're not ensuring that you will not have any problems. You're ensuring that you will minimize the problems. And when you do run into problems, organization will be able to respond. Um, so I think that's what I typically do, right? And I've done it in the past multiple times, and clients that agree to do this pre-work and assess where they are and how ready they are to really undertake a major transformation, by making critical few tweaks, they've been able to start in a much better footing and be able to get much more of their expected outcomes than if they hadn't spent the time preparing the organization for what was to come.
I appreciate that a lot. I think that makes a lot of sense. Building that trust, building that authority, being able to say no now to double down in the future, whether that's with that client or just the trust that you've built, is so important. One of the things that my former PwC partner he taught me everything I know about consulting, basically. He was very much like, Guillaume, there are two types of consultants. There are the hunters and there are the farmers. And he was like, I'm a hunter. I love to go after new business. Like, that's my job. That's how I, enjoy my work. But the consultants that build most are the ones who are actually great at farming. Because it's one thing to get a new client, but it's much more valuable for you and the client to be able to take that first engagement and deliver outstanding value, obviously, but then identify other areas where you can either implement, right, the roadmap that you've designed, or just identify other aspects where you can help. And like, really, the farmers are really the ones that bring the money in. Apologies. The reason I'm saying this, Humberto, is how do you, once you sign an engagement, right, how do you make the most out of this, and how do you optimize for retention, if at all, with Creact partners?
Well, I think part of it is again being transparent in the process. Um, um, I'm sorry, I had a problem with my audio here. Can you
Oh.
repeat the last question?
Yeah. So the last question is, how do you optimize for retention? Once you get that
Uh,
first engagement, right, with the client, how do you double down on it and be like, hey, here is the outstanding value that we agreed on and a bit, over deliver to transform that initial engagement into a multi-year, multi-project potentially relationship?
well, one thing is that you got to deliver what you promise, and for that you would have had managed expectations correctly. Um, when relationships begin, they're always nice. When you run into trouble, you have to show that you are there to support the client and make sure that you bring resources, creativity, and options to address situations, because that gives confidence, that builds trust, that you can be with them when things are good and when things get difficult, and hold yourself accountable, right, in the process, because I think that's part of what also builds trust. And I think when clients see that they can work with you, that you're transparent, that you can be a good partner in the good ones and the bad ones, they tend to give you more things to do, because there is no better client than the recurring client where you can help them achieve. You want to work yourself out of the job every time you do something for them so they can give you something different, because this is about enabling the organization. I really dislike the idea of consultancy as an addiction, right? Consultants that come in and leech onto the client and they want to stay there forever for the wrong reasons, right? One thing is to stay with your client forever because they give you different problems to solve. The other one is getting to your client and try to create dependencies that could really be done by the company. So I'm very keen on the enablement piece. And also when a client sees that you enable their people to be better, to be able to be resilient over time in how they solve problems, I think that they're likely to call you back. So that's typically how I see recurrency in clients is the most important.
Trust and transparency are going to be the theme of this episode, I think, Humberto. Um, One of the things that B2B coaches and consultants, right, struggle a lot with, from my experience, is getting testimonials, getting referrals, right? Being able to showcase proof of the transformation that they've accomplished for their clients. Mainly because, and that's again speaking from my experience, people don't necessarily like to advertise the fact that they had to hire a consultant to help them with a mess in their company, right? They're happy with the results, but typically they're going to be like, "That's it." Sometimes they might be like, "Yeah, I'm happy to be, as part of an RFP, the potential contact person for the case study." But I'm not going to advertise it publicly out there. Is that something that you do? Is that something that you've cracked the nut of? Like, how do you typically do that and recommend going about that?
Um, do exactly what?
So getting from one engagement, right? So there is the retention part of things, working more with that existing client, which you explained very clearly is about trust.
Mhm,
And again, not pushing something that is not the right time for.
mhm.
My follow-up question to this is, how do you take that initial engagement and say, hey, look, I've been able to help you. There might be other people like you who are looking for similar type of help, but who don't know who to reach out to or who don't know who to trust. And it's great for that to get testimonials, referrals, showcasing the work that you've done for like specific clients and being able
Yes,
to advertise it out there. Is that something that you do, that you work on? How do you typically?
absolutely. I mean, I think that there's no better advertising than a happy client. You can do, with all due respect, you can do
Aim?
postcards, you can do, you can publish it Instagram and all that, but
Yeah,
ultimately, you got to do what you got to do to get your client to say to others how much value they got out of working with you,
yeah.
how pleasant, how, effective it was working with you. There is no better advertising than a client referral. So I try to, when I do a good job, which is normally 100% of the time,
Normally.
yeah, normally, to get a testimonial, I think it's very, very valuable to hear clients tell stories about how you made a difference, what you helped them, how you enable them. I love the stories where you leave and you leave something, and that something continues and evolves, and the client calls you back to say, listen, this has been great, let me do it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Those are great. So I'm always after testimonials. I think they're super valuable. They're the best token of
Mhm.
marketing there is.
I like that, and that makes a lot of sense. So one of the things I've noticed is that you want to make it part of the engagement. You want to make it part of the agreed deliverables, right? Even if that means including a guarantee in there or like success fee whatsoever. Making the testimonial slash case study and transformation part of the engagement is typically key. One thing that works really, really well that I know we were doing at PwC and that a few of my clients are doing is
Mhm.
to seek awards, right? Because when you say, hey, we're going to apply for this awards, but for this we need to showcase the whole transformation, but this is what could be in for you. So having that incentive system, clients are very keen usually to go after that award and therefore to say, yeah, we've been working with XYZ to achieve, ABC outcome, and this is how we've done it. Give me my award. This works really, really well. And so podcast is great, but I agree with you. Testimonials are better, which is why we do this as well. But having people like the ones you're targeting, talking about how good of a job you've done with them is like, this is invaluable. This is just gold. Where, if I had to ask, Berto, where do you feel stuck right now? The reason I'm asking this is there might be consultants listening to us right now or later when the episode will be published that are facing the same challenge as you right now. I think it's super good to hear from your peers that are at the exact same level as you, how you think about this problem and how you are considering options to work around it. So in your business, in your consulting practice, where would you feel stuck and how are you thinking about it?
Well, in terms of stock, I would say it's difficult these days to have time to do deep thinking.
Mhm.
Being an architect and a urban planner and a planner, I like creativity, I like time to think. And especially since the pandemic, it's become normalized that you just fill your calendar with conversations and meetings and all that. And sometimes I need that quiet time. And I haven't, I have more balance now that I'm independent than before, obviously, but I still struggle to find that quiet time, which sometimes I only find very early in the morning, in the evening, or sometimes in the weekend to be creative. So that's a challenge. But in a different domain, I think that people having the expectation that business transformation is instantaneous, that if you get technology, if you get new tools, transformation will happen. And it's become almost a misnomer. Everybody throws the word around. What is transformation really? What does it really mean? Right? And managing and getting people to understand the complexity of what really makes it a very successful transformation is challenging, right? Sometimes, I always try to find different ways to address it, tailored to each client situation, because sometimes the best way to convey the meaning is to really understand how they define value and then tie it to that. But transformation is sometimes I get stuck in trying to make sure that people understand what that really means, besides being a very buzzword that everybody wants to use because it sounds cool.
Yeah, showcasing the value without using additional buzzwords is like the outcome, the benefits is super, super key and super important. What's the next big lever for growth for you, Humberto? Like where do you see the biggest opportunity for Creact partners in the next like 3 to 6 months?
Well, I'm seeing a lot of opportunity in bridging humans and AI together and what that means, right? There is a lot of investments being made at all levels around Gen AI, and its potential to change business is immense.
Mhm.
But we're not really truly understanding as a mass business the challenges that brings to people, right? The insecurity, the hopes and fears that could get in the way of realizing the benefit of the technology. So I think, that's an old problem, right? How to bridge technology and people together, but AI takes it to a different level,
Yeah.
right? And I think that there is a lot of opportunity for those people. And also the other thing is that organizations have become somewhat dysfunctional, right? People are doing so many things. There's so many projects, and sometimes the noise doesn't allow you to like question, is this a priority? Am I really impacting anything meaningful in the business? So I think that there's going to be a great opportunity in helping companies get organized around achieving their most desired outcomes and the impact they want to have either in their communities or the planet or their own finances.
Makes a lot of sense. Humberto, ladies and gentlemen, Humberto, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, where should they go?
Well, I have a website. I'm in LinkedIn, so always welcome messages via LinkedIn. I have a website, www.crearc.com. I think it could be in your
All the links
description.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to have conversations, brainstorms. I welcome all kinds of exchange. I think significant conversations could lead to meaningful results. So I always welcome a conversation about challenges and see how we can address them.
We will definitely put all the links in the description. Humberto, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great talking to you.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.